you already asked about grass-fed. That doesn't mean anything. It means it ate a blade of grass in its lifetime. It means nothing. So everything is on a spectrum. And the challenge with claims is they don't allow for any nuance. And so they kind of set a bar, but usually the bar is lower than the average consumer would desire.
Hey guys, welcome back to the Digest This podcast. I'm your host, Bethany Cameron, and today we are talking all about meat and the misconceptions of meat. We're also talking about chicken and is it really the dirty bird? I have on the show Robby, who is one of the founders of Force of Nature. And if you don't know about Force of Nature or who they are an amazing company providing quality meat to your dinner table, basically. They're everywhere. They're sold online. They are in tons of grocery stores, and they blend organ meats into their ground meat, but they also sell plenty of other cuts and options. They have meatballs now, but we're really not here to talk about their products. It's not about get Force of Nature. Robby really goes into what to look for at the grocery store. We really go into the labeling and the misconception of organic versus grass-fed versus grass-finished versus 100% grass-fed and just grass-fed. We go into organic and antibiotics, and does that mean if it's organic, does that mean it's antibiotic-free or not? We talk about the benefits that meat can have, not just for humans, but for women in particular, especially if you're pregnant or you're menstruating. We really go into a lot of different topics that I feel the meat industry tends to hide. And so we really want to just help you be more educated in deciding what type of meat to look for, even if you are just, at the meat counter and looking for a really good cut of meat. We even talk about the color of fat, and there's some yellow fat, there's some white fat. Does that make a difference? Is yellow more nutritious, or does that mean it's gone bad? So we really have a really fun conversation. So I hope you enjoy it just as much as I did. Thank you so much, Robby, for coming on the show today. It's a pleasure to have you.
Thanks so much for having me. I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. So before we even get started officially, I like to start my podcast with rapid fire yes or no questions, but you could only answer yes or no. Are you ready?
All right, let's do it.
Okay. There's only like 4 here. Okay. So first question, does grass-fed meat mean it was never fed grains?
No.
Does the color of the fat in meat matter?
Sometimes. Oh, I can only answer yes or no. No.
Okay. We can get back to that too. We can dive in a little bit more. Is lighter colored meat less nutritious?
I don't know. I think the answer is
Does it depend on the animal?
Yeah, I think I'd say that that's a tough one to make it so binary.
All right. Well, okay, the last question. Is most meat in the grocery store grain-fed, even if it says grass-fed?
Oh yeah, definitely yes.
A new study recently came out about cellular fragility syndrome, which is a nutritional deficiency no one is talking about and no one really even knew existed until now. This deficiency is caused by a lack of essential fatty acid, and this fatty acid in particular is called C15. C15 deficiency syndrome is a newly discovered form of cell death caused by fragile fatty acids in cell membranes, which can accelerate aging-related breakdown and impair metabolic, liver, and heart health. As many as 1 in 3 people worldwide may have low C15 levels and cellular fragility syndrome. Now, I wouldn't share this doom and gloom info without also sharing some good news. And that news is that there's also an incredible scientific breakthrough to support this syndrome. Fatty 15 is on a mission to replenish our C15 levels and restore our long-term health. And get this, studies have also confirmed that the C15 inside Fatty 15 supplements is 3 times better, broader, and safer than omega-3. I actually started taking Fatty 15 in replace of omega-3 fish oil pills a while back because I found out about the dirty little secret that fish oil supplements have and how most of them are rancid and oxidized. Fatty 15 has 3 times more cellular benefits than omega-3 or fish oil. It's made from patented, pure, and oxidation-resistant C15 power derived from plants. So it's vegan-friendly and free of flavors, fillers, allergens, or preservatives. C15 is the only ingredient in Fatty 15, which is how it should be. No fillers whatsoever. So if you are wanting to stop oxidation in the body and slow down aging, or just looking for a safer alternative to omega-3 fish oil, give Fatty 15 a try, just like I did. You can get an additional 15% off their 90-day subscription starter kit by going to fatty15.com/digest and use code DIGEST at checkout. That's fatty, FATTY, the number 15.com/digest and use code DIGEST. All right, I've known about this for a while, but I was doing some more research and found out that more than half of coffee sold and produced contains mold, which of course can lead to health issues like food poisoning, immune system problems, and even sometimes cancer. Coffee actually has many health benefits, so I don't want to discard that, but there has been talk of potentially harmful chemicals called mycotoxins in coffee. And there's been claim that a lot of coffee on the market contains these toxins, increasing risk for several diseases. So what are mycotoxins? Well, mycotoxins are, as the name suggests, toxins formed by molds, tiny fungi that may grow on coffee bean crops, and these toxins can cause poisoning when you ingest too much of them. And if you're one to have a cup of joe every day or even multiple times a day, that's a lot of consumption and accumulation of these toxic molds. Many different types of mycotoxins exist, but the ones most relevant to coffee crops are aflatoxin B1 and acrotoxin A. Aflatoxin B1 is a known carcinogen and has been shown to have various harmful effects. Acrotoxin A has been less studied, but according to a study cited in the NIH, it's still believed to be a weak carcinogen that may even be harmful to your kidneys. This is why it's so important to buy not only organic coffee, but coffee tested for toxic mold to ensure you are drinking a clean cup that won't be adding to or even causing any health issues. Coffee can have many benefits. Just be sure you're getting them from a clean source like Equip Foods Clean Coffee. I have been a loyal consumer of Equip Foods products for a while, so when I found out they were finally coming out with a coffee that is not only organic, but mold-free and tested for mycotoxins, I was ecstatic. They sent me some early to try for myself, and I fell in love with it immediately. They sourced their beans from regenerative farms, which means the soil the coffee crops are grown in contain more nutrients than other soil used to grow crops. Equip Foods partners with small farm co-ops. So when you purchase their clean coffee, you're also supporting regenerative farming practices. All right, so if you're already drinking coffee, why not drink a cleaner cup that's organic and mold-free so you can actually get the benefits coffee can bring? Use my code DIGEST, which will get you 20% off not only their coffee, but all of their products, including their grass-fed collagen and grass-fed beef protein powder. Again, just go to equipfoods.com and use code DIGEST to receive 20% off your entire order. Now, this only works on non-subscription orders, so be sure when you check out that it's defaulted to a non-subscription. I know you're going to love it. Enjoy. Before I even dive in, why don't you first introduce yourself? Let my listeners know who you are and what you're about.
My name is Robby Sansom. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO of a company called Force of Nature Meats. We, just as it sounds like in the name, we sell meat, but not like the typical meat you get from the grocery store. I'm sure we'll get into that. meat that is sourced from animals that are living more evolutionarily consistent lives, from diet to lifestyle to impact on land, and symbiotic impact in ecosystems. Healthier product, more altruistic outcomes on the land and in communities and for consumers. Very, very, very thoughtful and intentional in terms of who we work with, what sort of outcomes we're trying to produce, and making sure that you can eat meat with confidence that it is healthy and that it is having a positive impact on the myriad of stakeholders that are impacted by the system it comes from, and really honestly combat many of the either myths about meat or even in some cases fair critiques of the conventional meat system with a system that actually solves many of the challenges meat is often called out for.
Yeah, well, I'm sure a lot of my listeners are already familiar with Force of Nature. I mean, you can get it at Sprouts now, it's at Whole Foods. It's funny because I had never heard of Force of Nature until I met my boyfriend, now husband, and we were at his family's like gathering, and his sister, who's really into holistic health as well, and she had brought out a Force of Meat package, and she's like, "Oh, Bethany, have you ever heard of this company? Like they mix organ meats into their beef." And I'm like, "No, I've never heard of that." She goes, "Oh my gosh, I love them." And that was kind of the inception and how I learned about you guys. And this was maybe like 3 years ago. And then it's so funny because ever since then, I hear about you guys all the time. And I'm like, okay, have I been like living under a rock here? But again, fast forward 3 years, you guys are everywhere. And I love what you're doing. You are incorporating the organs into the meat. And that's such a smart idea because a lot of people don't want to eat organs. And so why do you do that? And what like gave you that idea to even do that?
Yeah, well, we don't incorporate organs into every product. We have some products which we do incorporate organs, and that's part of the one of the features or the benefits of what we call our ancestral blends. So we sell the normal cuts of meat that you grew up eating, from ground meat to hamburgers, even hot dogs and steaks, and the typical stuff. And we do it across protein classes, so from beef, and then we have some exotics like bison and elk, and then we've historically offered monogastrics like pork and poultry, and we'll do that again in the future, but we're very, very selective, and we're working through building those supply chains out. But as for why some of our products, and again, that's our ancestral line, have organs into them, incorporated in it. When we started the company, it was a really interesting time. It was the first year the U.S. published data that said the generation being born will have a shorter life expectancy than their parents. And that's a really frustrating fact. I'm sure you and many of your listeners already know this. Now we're multiple years into that trend, and it just really bothered us. We were actually pretty frustrated and embarrassed by it. And we said, hey, like we're approaching our least healthy from a health span and lifespan and environmental toxin and stuff at a time when we spend the most on healthcare. We should be the most advanced. Like, what is going on? We've lost touch with our ancestral wisdom. Like, our ancestors would have first sought out these cuts of meat, these organ meats in the middle of the animal. They would have been the most nutrient dense, and so it was sort of like, well, how do we pay homage to that reality of our species? Like we've disassociated with the things that would be best for us at a time where our outcomes are worsening. We have to rectify this. We have to make a change. And so we weren't the first people to ever think about grounding organs into meat, but we thought about doing it at scale and retail and figuring out a way to blend it so it is palatable and approachable for the average person, where they won't really even taste the organs at all. Like they're bringing a lot of nutrients, but it doesn't take a lot to bring a ton of nutrients, so you don't have to taste it if you're intimidated by that. And then to call it an ancestral blend so it doesn't sound so intimidating, and to put it into ground formats where you can really cook it into anything with any recipe. It's very difficult to mess up. Most people understand how to work with it. So it's like, can we reintroduce organs into our diet, make it approachable, and mitigate any of the off-putting characteristics, whether that be flavor or calling it, say, an organ blend or an offal blend or a liver blend or something that, doesn't have the same ring to it as the ancestral blend.
Right. And it's also regenerative, right?
Well, regenerative is a raising claim, and yes, we most of all of our beef and bison is regeneratively raised and sourced. Um,
Is there any law or like thing, let's just say someone labels their meat regenerative, but it's actually not. Is there like a stamp that you could know it's regenerative, or is it just because the label says so?
yeah, claims are just it's like the Wild West, and it's not just regenerative. There are you can get certain animal welfare certifications or claims or seals on the package, third party seals, and the only thing you need is a checkbook.
Hmm.
You can make claims. You already asked about grass fed. That doesn't mean anything. It means it ate a blade of grass in its lifetime. It means nothing. Um, um, and so everything is on a spectrum. And the challenge with claims is they don't allow for any nuance. And so they kind of set a bar, but usually the bar is lower than the average consumer would desire, or they take common language and then wrap it with a regulatory or legal definition that falls dramatically short of the common language meaning. Like when you look at a package that says natural, you can rest assured nothing about it is natural.
Right.
And I think that's the sort of deception that I'm talking about. So with regenerative, this is sort of like the next evolution. I mean, or organic was the gold standard for a few decades, from most of the 2000s to now, and we're realizing that organic does a lot of really important things, and removing some of the most harmful chemicals from our food system, but it doesn't address a lot of things. And regenerative can take that torch and raise the bar, so to speak. But again, it also, to your point, doesn't have a true legal definition adopted by the USDA. So in order to make a regenerative claim, you have to submit paperwork and a definition and a standard to the USDA to say, when I put it on my package, this is what I mean. And then you got to include some language on your package.
Mm-hmm.
Further, some retailers, Whole Foods as an example, says, you know what, like there needs to be more regulation on this. And so for us to, feel like there is integrity and valid validation behind these claims, we're going to accept certain third party verifiers. So there are third party regenerative verifiers out there. Rodale Institute has one called ROC, Regenerative Organic Certified. Savory Institute has one called Land of Market. Understanding Ag has one called Regenified. So there's just a whole bunch of them, and I would say they each have pros and cons. None of them are perfect. Just like nothing in this world is perfect. It's all on a spectrum, and so they mean different things. But we're definitely early, and claims themselves, just the claims space at large, again, is chaotic and confusing and extremely misleading by design, sadly. And regenerative is just now entering into that space, and it's like, okay, what will regenerative be reduced to? Who will take the pole position in defining and being the third party? Like that stuff's all being worked out, and I think it's a lot of words, but all that to say, I think I would caution anybody from only looking to a single claim or delegating authority to their decisions to any third party. So like if you're going to buy Force of Nature, don't buy it because it says regenerative on it, or it says 100% grass fed. We do say those things. We have to try to put things on package with limited space that reach certain people in the grocery store, but that's really not enough. You should go a step deeper, look at the package, look at the ingredients, go to the website of the brand. Are they showing you pictures? Are they sending you videos? Are they telling you the things you want to hear? Or are they showing you things that are important? Are they authentic? Are they proud? I mean, like the people that are doing things really well are so excited to show you, they won't shut up about it. The people that are hiding things typically just put a claim on the package and then don't really talk about it, and the rest is sort of swept under the rug. And so I think
Mm.
claims are just an area I can't caution people enough. I say go a layer deeper and trust your gut, and just know that it's like defensive driving. People are trying to mislead you.
Yeah, that's a really great tip. If you are, for any kind of claim, if they are really talking about it, if they have articles on their website, if they have, pages and a blog about this and that and how it's made, I think that's a really good sign. If there's no indication beyond just what it says on the package, yeah, that may be a red flag there. And speaking of claims, let's get into the whole grass-fed, grass-finished, what that means, and the misleading claims of grass-fed.
Yeah, so the way it's supposed to work, and there's different kind of bodies that dictate what you're allowed to say and do, and in the space of meat, the FDA is one that most people are aware of, but for meat and dairy, it's really the USDA, and they're a little bit more rigorous than the FDA. But on grass-fed specifically, I think it was in the USDA used to have a standard and a definition for it, but back in 2016 they took it away. So basically, as of since 2016, saying something is grass-fed basically means like what I mentioned before. It ate a blade of grass, and basically every cow that is born on land. There's not really a scenario where an animal lives its entire life on concrete and in a CAFO. It's not really how it works. You typically have what's called cow-calf operation. So people have a bunch of cows, females, and they'll breed them, and then they'll produce a crop. Their crop that year will be calves, and then those calves will be ideally left on their mother's milk and go through a natural cycle, which often unfortunately isn't the case. They're weaned too early and all sorts of other disruptive things, and then they're sold to somebody that will stock them for a while, and then they'll make their way to a CAFO to be really fattened up in the latter parts of their life. And we're talking about a 24 to 30 month cycle there for beef. Again, if we're talking about grass feeding, we're talking about ruminants, and largely we're talking about beef and a tiny little bit of bison. So again, like almost every animal qualifies for the grass-fed claim. So it's like you're not differentiating anything by saying grass-fed. All you're doing is confusing well-meaning consumers. And those are the sorts of things I take issues with. When consumers are going and looking to try to find things that align with their values and they're being intentionally misled and deceived, that really pisses me off.
Yeah,
And
and
so
they're paying
much of
more
this,
for it.
yeah, and in many cases you pay a premium for it, and you're not actually getting what you think. In fact, I would say in almost all instances, you are not getting what you think, even when you pay a premium for something that says natural, organic, grass-fed, etc. But specifically with 100% grass-fed, or sorry, with grass-fed, so you can't just look for grass-fed. You have to look for, and this is regulated, 100% grass-fed. If you write 100% grass-fed, that means it has to be 100% grass-fed. If it's not 100% grass-fed, then you need to put 98% grass-fed. You know what I mean? If you really want to, and like that's not to disparage 98%, because sometimes there's unique circumstances. Maybe a farmer had a drought one year and they fret and they had to feed grain cubes, or in the winter they did. Who knows, right? Like I don't want to disparage anything because people have all different kinds of contexts. But if you say 100% grass-fed, that should mean, by definition, that it spent the majority of its life on pasture and eating grass and natural grass and native forbs. So you have to look for that distinguishing sort of qualifier, 100%. Grass finished does not mean the same thing. It can be grain-fed and grass-finished. So you're not looking for grass-fed, grass-finished, like some people have said, or looking for that grass-finished. You're looking for the percentage. Ideally, it says 100% grass-fed.
So can a cow be, quote, 100% grass-fed and still be grain finished?
No.
Okay.
No. It can be grass-fed and have grain finish. It can be 70%, 90%, 88% grass-fed, and that maybe it only got that little bit of grain in the end. But if
Because
you
what
want it
I
to have, if you want it to have a lifetime of eating an evolutionarily consistent diet, it needs to say 100% grass fed.
okay, because I've seen labels
Or you
too
need to
where
go and not give it, or not pay attention to the claim and go to the farm and see for yourself, and then the claim doesn't matter, you know?
okay. On labels, I've seen it say grass fed and grass finished, not 100% grass fed, but it does say grass fed and grass finished. Is that also a safe claim that you could feel confident about?
You could say that it was grass fed and grass finished, and it spent its entire life in a pasture eating grass with a tray of grain to supplement its grass diet. So no,
That's
it's
so
not what you think.
confusing. Yeah, because I mean, if anyone doesn't know, grass finished versus grain finished, it basically means at the end of their life, they feed them a bunch of grain to fatten them up so that they can get more for their money when, the cow is sold and have more meat on the cow, correct?
Yeah, yeah. The
Okay.
finishing step fattens them up, and saying grass finished just means the finishing step was done on grass. It doesn't imply that it only ate grass its entire life. So
It's so sketchy.
it's sad that, and like, the more I used to say, commodification is price above all else at the expense of all else, meaning we've cheapened our food system and we've traded value off in exchange for cheapness. And I still believe that's true of commodifying a system. But now I'm realizing that I think claims are heavily commodified as well. And
Man.
for us, like Force of Nature, we're a premium brand that's trying to honor the potential of meat and give consumers what they expect, not what we can get away with. And I'm realizing that, like, I can't compete on price. I don't want to. I want you to perceive the value in what you're getting, and I want you to get the fairest price possible. But it's going to be more expensive than a system that is cheap, because my system is valuable. But I'm also realizing that I'm not going to be able to compete on claims, because I will greatly exceed any set of claims that exist out there, and yet there's not, that the system doesn't set you up for being able to do that very well, because there's too much. You would need too many different things to represent too many different stuff, and it takes too much money out of the farmer's pocket, and it drives too much, to get these, to do the audits and to pay the verifiers and all these things. Like, it's a pay per play game, and it really doesn't, and it really confuses the consumer. It doesn't actually create more value for them in most instances. And so I think again, 100% grass fed, pasture raised. I think where appropriate, or organic feed or organic system, these things are uniquely important, but they're not the end all be all. And there's always nuance, and there's always more than meets the eye. And I think it's really important that you understand the ethos of the organization, and they're transparent about the system and what they're doing and why. And that's where I feel like claims have a place, but that has been captured, and they don't, they can't be fully trusted for what they may seem to be.
What about injections and vaccinations and things like that? Can a 100% grass-fed cow still have antibiotics or, vaccinations and things like that? Or
It's totally antibiotic free would be a totally different claim.
okay, so because that's where I think it even gets more confusing is, like, let's just say, could you have a grass-fed, grass-finished, organic, like all the things meat, but then it's still given antibiotics? Or would an organic claim, I guess, comfort you in that they weren't given antibiotics or
I forget on
vaccinations?
the organic. I think organic actually does. I think that, in organic's obviously different for vegetables and fruits than it is for and packaged goods than it is for meat. Off the top of my head, I can't recall actually if organic addresses antibiotics. I think in meat it might.
It's been 4 years since the pandemic hit, and I will tell you, I have noticed that I've aged a lot more rapidly since then due to just the stress of everything. I really started to notice it in 2021 after I moved 3 times within 12 months. And now, with the aging effects that the stress of my fourth move in the past 4 years can do, I've started dabbing into anti-aging skincare products. But not only have I been looking for products that combat fine lines and wrinkles, but ones that are also non-toxic. I honestly wish I started focusing on this more in my 20s, but now in my mid-30s, I know it's never too late to take charge. I once even looked into Botox, but as I did more research years back on what the harmful effects on what fillers and Botox can actually do to your body and the severe risk factors involved, I happily passed on those options. So again, I was looking for an alternative that was all natural. That's when I found Purity Woods. Purity Woods products leverage the wonders of a revolutionary ingredient, which is maple leaf extract. Maple leaves contain anti-inflammatory antioxidants and hydrating properties, which can help soothe irritated or inflamed skin, all while plumping, brightening, and nourishing it. And I hate to say it, but I still get breakouts every time I'm about to start my cycle. So anti-aging products that can also help with that is super important to me. With 25 unique and potent ingredients to help keep your skin bright, plump, and firm, I am a very happy customer. I've definitely tried my fair share of natural skincare products, but the thing that stood out to me the very first time I put on Purity Woods Age-Defining Dream Cream was that it wasn't heavy at all, nor was it oily or have any irritating scent. And the icing on the cake is that this product is certified USDA organic. So if you want to turn back time on the appearance of your skin with Purity Woods Age-Defying Dream Cream, they are currently offering 17% off site-wide. Plus, I also have an additional 10% discount for my listeners. That's a total of 27% savings. Just go to puritywoods.com/digest or simply enter the code DIGEST at checkout for an additional 10% off your first order. That's puritywoods.com and enter code DIGEST for a total of 27% off your first order. All right, raise your hand if you are stressed right now or have anxiety. I recently moved and I went through a lot of stress right now. And I don't know where you are in your health journey or just in life in general, but stress and anxiety, I think, affect everyone. And for me, a few things that just did help me just through all of that is just staying hydrated. I know that's so simple and it's really overlooked. I made a point to just make sure I was staying hydrated with electrolytes, a lot of water, and I am a horrible water drinker. So what helped me during this time is just drinking a pack of Element. Every single day, I put it in my big thermos and I drink it throughout the day. It really, really helped me. It also helped me with being less constipated because everyone knows if we are not hydrated enough that we can get constipated. Element has really been my go-to electrolyte drink mix for like 2 years, I want to say now. It's been amazing. I always opt for the unflavored raw version, which is just 3 simple ingredients. There's no natural flavors. There's no funky ingredients. And I just love that. And I just add like a splash of lemon or grapefruit juice just to flavor it up. You can do lime. They do have other flavors as well. So if raw, unflavored is not your cup of tea, they do have other options as well. I just stick to the unflavored. And for anyone that's never tried it, you can get a free sample pack to really explore all that they have to offer. So if you just go to drinkelement.com/digest, you can get a free sample pack. So again, just go to drinklmnt antibiotics.com/digest to get this amazing offer. And they also have a no questions asked refund policy. So you can try their products totally risk-free. And if you don't like it, they will give you your money back, no questions asked. You really have nothing to lose, you guys. Again, just go to drinkelement.com/digest to get this amazing offer and a free sample pack. It's so confusing because it's like, for me, well, if it's organic meat, but it's not grass-fed, maybe that takes care of the vaccinations, but they still could be in a feedlot getting organic grains, right? Like, it just, there's like so many.
I've seen some pretty. I'll just say I've seen some pretty horrendous organic operations that wouldn't pass the sniff test for anybody. That again, like, what you think you're getting is not what you're getting. And again, on the antibiotic piece, I'm sorry, I don't have that part submitted to memory because I'm not, my focus.
Yeah.
If I buy organic, it's because I'm looking for the absence of chemicals in the system, and that's pretty much all that claim really means to me personally. And so then I look for what else is it that's important to me. And in meat, you'll typically see an NAE claim or no antibiotics ever to go along with an organic claim. These are, but now you're going to start to see a new version of the antibiotic claim, a no antibiotics important or essential in human medicine. So they can figure out how to put antibiotics back in there again and make a claim that will seemingly make people happy, because that's what we do. We in this industry is try to spin it.
Okay. So now we should look out for that, apparently.
Yeah, I think well, I'm going to get on a rabbit hole here, but even the antibiotic thing is interesting to me, because I think I'm not no antibiotics ever, and my family isn't. Like, I try to avoid antibiotics at all costs, but if my child has a life-threatening infection, I'm going to treat that with the proper, I think obviously we defer to antibiotics too frequently, and there's a lot of disruption to your own microbiome, and it's a tool that has a place, but it definitely isn't to be taken lightly.
Never be the first choice, yeah.
Yeah, and I think in animals, if my dog it was in a similar situation, I would try to avoid giving antibiotics if I could, but if I had to, I would treat them, and that's how I think these animals, domesticated animals, even in our food system, should be treated. I hate to imagine a scenario where an animal is left to suffer because a farmer is afraid to treat it, because then it gets excluded from its program and it loses its value. And that's what I think a no antibiotic ever program incentivizes farmers to do in some instances, sadly. Yet at the same time, these claims are, again, it's like they're really trying to be black or white, and they're trying to prevent bad actors, and it's a slippery slope. So it's no antibiotics ever, but I think that's hypocritical. I think you can say no subtherapeutic or no prophylactic antibiotics, meaning you're not giving them a daily or recurring or ongoing regimen of antibiotics to promote their growth or to sustain life in a CAFO environment that otherwise wouldn't be compatible with life. Like, that's obviously despicable. But I also think the other extreme, I don't think going to the extreme is the appropriate thing, even though we do. I mean, our protocol calls for no antibiotics ever. Like, we talk about it as a team, but I would love to get us to the point where we can get people past the idea that it has to be no antibiotics ever, and that it can instead be no subtherapeutic antibiotics, and we can be rational about, avoiding unnecessary suffering without.
Right. I mean, I've just seen, giving antibiotics to animals that don't even need it. It's almost like a prevention, or something like that.
Well, it's a growth. It is a again, like I said, when you have animals shoulder to shoulder in an unnatural environment, they're miserable, they're sedentary, they're fed a diet that's making them sick, they're chronically ill, and miserable, and standing in their own filth, and they're going to need antibiotics to be able to accommodate all of the unnatural aspects and the health consequences of that. But also, antibiotics are a growth promotant. That might be the primary reason they're used so heavily. Like 80% of antibiotics used in the US are used in animal agriculture. That's because it makes them grow faster. Again, that's a trade-off for cheapening meat. The faster it grows, the less it costs for them to produce it.
Yeah, it's a quicker turnaround for sure.
So like that needs to be discouraged and managed and regulated, and that's where we should be focusing on.
Yeah,
No
well,
antibiotics ever is a little overcorrection. But to your point, like organic, like vaccines and others, like some vaccines and are mandated depending on what part of the country it's in and what region you're in and what they may or may not be facing. So, I mean, you're going to have to go, you got to get into layers of detail and case by case. You got to figure out like, what are the issues that are most important to me? And there's not going to be a single claim that addresses all of them. You gotta, if it's important to you, then you got to do your homework, or hopefully a brand recognizes what's important and does their own promotion of their values, and maybe you can just easily find the brands that have a set of values that you align most closely with.
Yeah. So if we're at a butcher counter, no labels, right? You're there, you're looking at the meat behind the counter. What should we look for in terms of the color of the meat or the color of the fat?
I think this is a little bit of there's some science and then there's some myth. I think a lot of a lot of the color of fat, for example, has to do with diet and season. And I know that, grass-fed animals are typically considered to have more yellow fat, and that's commonly said to be, some of the nutrients in the diet passing through, and maybe beta carotene. And you do commonly see pasture-raised animals with different colors of fat, and so I think, but you also see them with white fat. And I think what's cool about animals raised in pasture is that at any given time they could be eating many dozens, 50 or more different types of plants, and those it's kind of like us eating diversity, eating colors. They're passing through all sorts of macro, micro, and phytonutrients, and those are being upcycled and incorporated into the meat and fat of the animal. They will pass through flavor. They will pass through nutrition. Again, the more diversity, the better. But it could vary, again, by region and by season. And you may have one of the healthiest pieces of meat ever with white-looking fat, or more yellow-looking fat. And so you can't just reduce it down to it either is or it isn't, good or bad based off of coloration. Although coloration can impact it. And as far as like the redness, you were talking earlier, the darker the meat, you'll notice that on animals, muscles that get used more often tend to be darker, and muscles that are used less often tend to be a little bit lighter. And muscles that get used more often, and particularly on animals that are older, have had more blood flow and more nutrients and more use stress and response and development, and then you've incorporated more of that of those properties that are good and healthy into that meat, and I believe that is true, but it comes with use and age, and yes, I think there is, it can be said most often that will be more dense with and more nutritious, I would say. And you really see it in game meats as well. They tend to be really dark, but it also means that they're probably more lean. And so
Yeah,
you're kind of getting into like a macro, protein versus fat ratio in there, and some others. So again, it's just not so simple.
I was just about
but
to
a
say,
general
because,
rule.
well, elk, we had bought some elk, and it was so dark. I mean, it was like, I don't want to say black, but it was really dark. And my husband was like, man, this is like really good nutrient dense meat. And it basically had no fat. It was like all muscle. And like you were saying, I'm sure elk, they're very muscular and they use their muscles maybe more than other animals. And so I just thought that was interesting when you said using the muscles more. I was like, well, elk, they're super lean.
Yeah, no, and again, I think like as a general rule, it's fair, but I just wanted to point out that it's not a law, and there's nuance to it, and yeah, it's interesting what becomes popular, right? Because like a tenderloin is very tender because it's not used very often, and ground meat is ground because it's typically really tough, and and full of tendon-y cuts and collagen-y cuts and stuff. And so I think what like people tend to think of like really soft, tender meat as the pinnacle. And it's like, yeah, that has a nice mouth feel, but actually like ground meat's probably the healthiest and most nutritious.
Because it contains like the tendons and like
Oh,
collagen and stuff.
it'll have more collagen, and it'll have more of those denser, tougher cuts, and it'll have
So
a
what
good
cuts of
mixture and
meat?
array.
So for ground meat, what cuts or what part of the animal do they use for ground meat?
I mean, anything, any part of any of the meat parts of the animal can go into ground meat. What tends to happen is folks will say like, okay, what are the most valuable or most expensive cuts of the animal? Like, I'm not going to ground up my tenderloins and my ribeyes, for example. You might if you have to. I mean, we've done it in a pinch. You don't want to, but you're balancing inventory and kind of all of these things. And um, uh, but what tends to happen is those sorts of cuts get pulled off the tenderloin, the ribeyes. These steak cuts you see most often, and they're the things that are left that ultimately don't have much of a home are maybe some of the shanks, or maybe the meat in between the ribs, or maybe some of the tougher round steaks or roasting cuts that just aren't as popular in the non except for in those braising seasons and those cold months where people are making a lot of stews. When they're not making a lot of stews, those things are probably going to ground meat. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, totally. And because I've always wondered that too. I'm like, what part of the animals in actually like the ground part? Because you're not going to use a choice cut of meat, most likely. Now, and then in terms of fat, like you were saying, there's yellow fat. I've seen yellow fat, and at the time, I was like, I think this piece of steak is bad because it was like a yellow piece of like marble. And I asked my husband, he's like, oh no, I don't think it's bad. But in my, uneducated eye, I was like, it's yellow. Like, I think it's gone bad. So that's definitely not the case, correct?
Correct. Right. I mean, it probably means it came from a system where it ate, mostly grass and forbs, and in a certain region at a certain time of year, and it's probably a good thing. But again, I certainly wouldn't be turned off by it, but I wouldn't discriminate against something that has a lighter or wider color of fat either.
Okay, good tip. Now, many of my listeners do struggle with digestive issues, and they are wanting to eat meat, but perhaps they probably can't digest it, right? So they want to eat it, they have that desire, but they just struggle with digestive issues. Do you have any tips?
For folks that have digestive issues specific to meat?
Yeah, because sometimes meat can be really tough to digest. So, for example, like, should they opt for leaner cuts of meat versus like a fattier cut to digest it better, or maybe like opt for ground versus a steak, things like that?
Yeah, my suspicion is that if somebody has digestive issues, it's likely not because of the meat. Um, so I would say try to figure out what's causing your digestive issues, and do a stool analysis and parasitology, and try to do some testing on yourself, or to do an elimination diet to see what may or may not be causing that. As far as like meat specifically and meat prep, what's going to be the least challenging? It's not my area of expertise, but certainly broth, and maybe like I said, ground meat that's both tender and it brings forward a lot of collagen, because I know collagen can be beneficial to GI health. But my suspicion is if you're struggling processing meat, there's underlying issues that are at the root cause.
Yeah, well, bone broth is a great introduction, first of all. And so, at least for me, in my experience, ground meat has been so much easier to digest because it's basically pre-chewed. And then again, for me, opting for leaner cuts versus a fattier cut, because if it's too fatty, sometimes the fat can be really hard to digest and it could just be too heavy for your digestive system. So for me, at least, opting for leaner cuts has helped tremendously.
Yeah, and again, I guess I didn't think about the question from the perspective of somebody may not have had meat in a long time, and they may not, and so they may be slowly reintroducing it into your diet, and so yeah, I think those two things make a ton of sense. Do it, do it slowly, and listen
Mhm.
to your body. But
Now, I
but like I said, if somebody's been eating meat their entire life and they still struggle with it, there's probably something else going on.
For sure. Now, I've heard of the quote, dirty chicken, and that chicken is a dirty animal. What's your take on chicken versus beef? And you think it's like just a filthy piece of meat people should avoid?
That sounds disparaging to chicken.
I love chicken,
The
but
animal itself, it's the dirty bird. I think what's unfortunate is, like, I have chickens in my backyard right now. They lay eggs for my family, and we love them. But the chicken meat industry is not what people think. It is. I think it's been the benefactor of an incredible PR campaign to promote the consumption of chicken. I think as a society, we eat about 350% more chicken than we did a generation ago. And we eat about 80% of the beef we did a generation or two ago, basically going back to like 1940. So maybe a generation and a half. And so we eat less meat and a lot more chicken. The way we've been able to do that is through industrializing the bird. Instead of having them out running around like you see in all the old movies, they kind of have a chicken coop and they run around and they're pecking at the ground, and they're, like, that doesn't exist. Like, they're in factory settings inside closed doors, living in very dense, synthetic, confined, artificial light, contrived food, treated with all sorts of chemicals. I mean, it's very, very, very sad reality. We kill 30 something million head of cattle a year in the US. We kill 8 billion chickens a year in the US. The meat is not healthier for you. It is actually rather void of many critical nutrients and minerals. It is whiter in color, and it has become popular for that. But the welfare, the nutrition, and the impact on the land, they are fed, generally speaking, GMO corn and soy, so it laden with toxic chemicals, harmful system to produce those feedstocks. So it's not better for the environment. It's not better for you. It's not better for the animal. And it's pretty despicable when you consider its roots and what it's become. And for me, particularly, how it is marketed to women as like the preferred choice. Like, women should be eating chicken and not beef. And I feel like that is, as a father of two young girls, a lie and a travesty and a crime against 50% of our population. Women should be eating more red meat, not more chicken. It is better for you. It is better for the environment when raised correctly. It is better for the welfare of animals when raised correctly. And there is a place for poultry. Like I said, these are sentient creatures. They are, they deserve our reverence and respect and appreciation. They should not be the cornerstone of our diet. Humans evolved chasing herds of animals across, the plains of Africa and North America and Europe. They did not evolve chasing 8 billion chickens around. This is just not fundamental to our evolution or our diet. And it's taken that place because they're small and they have short life cycles and they're easy to manipulate, and they can be commodified and industrialized in these synthetic systems. But that is not reason for it to be the cornerstone of our diet any more than it is reason for corn and soy to be in every single product in the grocery store.
Yeah, no. And I think again, if you source them from a good source chicken, they can be delicious. And I think chicken soup is like, I love it. I made it today, in fact. But like you said, there's a lot of nutrients that lack that beef and red meat contain like different vitamins and minerals that you just can't get from the white meat of chicken.
On chicken, the last on that point, and then the last thing I'll say is like my position on chicken is it has a place, but we should eat a lot less of it. And when we do get it, we should pay a lot more for it. I mean, it should candidly, like if when Force of Nature sold chicken, and when we start selling chicken again, like we're working really hard to build a system we can be proud of. Like we'll sell whole chickens, frozen chickens, and they'll probably be $30, maybe more. And you juxtapose that with the commodity chicken that you can get at a grocery store where it's rotisserie cooked, ready for you to pick up just next to the checkout line, and it's like $5.99. You're paying a lot less for that bird, but you're trading off a lot of value, and there's a lot of negative externalities that aren't reflected in that shelf price that have very real and tangible costs on society and your health and in other ways that are deferred. And then as far as those nutrients, yeah, I mean, even there's a study called Priority Micronutrients and Food that a guy named Ty Beal did. And to your point about nutritional density, I think the most critical nutrients of need globally is like vitamin A, zinc, folate, calcium, B12. Maybe I'm missing a few in there. And, it takes like a teaspoon or like 11 calories of liver to give you 30% of your daily allowance of those nutrients of need. It takes
So easy.
1,100 calories of chicken.
Oh my goodness. It's so funny to me how beef has really been demonized, especially towards women. They think, oh, it's less feminine. Oh, I shouldn't be eating beef because it's going to make me look like manly, or I don't know. But women particularly need red meat in their diet. And I kind of wanted to dive into that and the benefits of red meat for women. And can you elaborate on that, and especially pregnant women?
Well, yeah, I mean, look, if you want your hair to improve and your skin to improve and your nails to improve, eat meat, eat red meat. And if you're eating the right types of meat, like positive impact on again through collagen and many other things on your GI tract, all kinds of macro, micro, and even phytochemical compounds are beneficial there. Like I mentioned, iron, obviously, iron deficiency is huge for women, particularly women of reproductive age or pregnant women. And then you got, all of in a pregnant woman, you have increased needs, not just for the mother, but for the baby. And you want, there are really important things happening. There's a little brain being developed in there and a nervous system and all of these other things. Like you do not want to deprive you or your child key building blocks of life in that stage. And, the only way to get many of like B12 or creatine, for just as two examples, are through meat and red meat. And the only way to get a full array of essential amino acids is through meat, and again the best source being red meat, and the most bioavailable form. So you can incorporate more of these critical nutrients with fewer calories, and to do so and be satiated and healthy and so on. So I think on the pregnancy side, and then that on that point of satiation and nutrient density, I mean, that's just it. You can get what you need and become full and eat less, and then you have less concern about having cravings for junk food and then filling up on things that are very harmful to you and cause all sorts of variants of sickness and illness, and obesity, but also like not to be lost in the fold there, but mental health.
For sure.
Eating healthy food that's good for you, that's delivering what your body needs, is going to make you a happier person, more resilient person, more fun, and you're going to get more to enjoy out of life whenever you have a good mental, physical, spiritual, and a good physical body to go with it.
Yeah, and I think it could definitely help with blood sugar regulation. And for me, I think I find times, and I go through bouts where I'll eat a lot of red meat and then I'll kind of taper off and I won't. And, it kind of goes through its ebbs and flows. But I do notice that the more red meat I eat, the more I crave it. And I don't mind it. Yeah.
I feel like the more like when I'm on a roll working out and exercising, I crave it. You know what I mean? Like your body knows what's good, and it like we have so much wisdom in our bodies that we have to trust and listen to it. I think and like when you're eating healthy, when you're on a roll eating healthy, your body craves healthy food. Like there's no doubt about it. And red meat is no exception. There's a really interesting man and researcher named Fred Provenza that wrote a whole book called Nourishment, and it speaks to this very point where it's like nobody tells animals what to eat, you know, but somehow they figure out how to get what they need. And even when they're in natural environments that they have a diversity of things to choose from, they will select for um, different plants and herbs and things that can deliver them what they're deficient in, or what they're in need of seasonally or whatever. And like we have that, and it's part of the reason, we have 10 times more non-human cells than human cells in our body. Like there's wisdom in the biome that makes us up, that tells us, that triggers all of these complex systems to give us signals to desire things that are going to be for the good of the whole. And so I think, I think red meat is not just a superfood; it's an essential food, and I think it's really really important, as we've said, for all people, and particularly for women, to kind of be given, like, it's not like, it's a terrible way to say it, not to have permission, but like society can't fail half our population, right? Like let's set our next generation up for success and make sure that we celebrate. Like there's a whole, I've talked to some folks that have podcasts that are predominantly women, and like they're like going around eating meatballs, and there's like trends tending on the internet like eating meatballs, and it's like, yes, like that is what we should be normalizing and celebrating, because it's for the best.
Oh yeah, I have a prepped meat, just like in my fridge, and it's great, and in my freezer, and just can come out and thaw that I previously cooked just for like emergencies. And to your point, when a lot of people opt for protein bars, and it's like just eat a hamburger patty, and it's like 130 calories for a hamburger patty, and there's like 25 grams of protein versus this protein bar. It's filled with sugar. It has like 10 grams of protein, and it's probably not complete protein. It's interesting to me, what people think of like as, oh, you can't have like a hamburger patty as a snack. Like it's weird.
I love it. I mean, I love to hear you say that, because I've definitely gone on and especially traveling when I don't have like my essentials with me. I will travel with hamburger patties or with steaks, but if I have to go someplace and grab hamburger, like I'll do that all the time. But yeah, even like when I'm at home, it's from a convenience perspective. Like you can't go to Chick-fil-A and get a value meal and have it be as affordable or as convenient as taking a pound of ground meat in a brick, as they tend to come, and a bag of frozen organic vegetables out of your freezer that you have for an emergency, and throwing it into a pan and cooking the two things together. I mean, it takes it. You're about $12 in cost and about 15 minutes in time. You know what I mean? And you can feed a family of four for we'll say $15 in 15 minutes. You can feed a family of four a meal that will allow them to thrive and give them everything they need. Meanwhile, if you had to drive to a fast food place to get a Chick-fil-A, one number five is $15.
Wow.
And it's gonna have negative consequences for you. So
That's insane. Yeah, for one meal. It
but it's
really
chicken,
is.
and so people like think like it's good. And it's like, no, just take the
Yeah. Well,
ancestral blend, feed your family, and your pocketbook and your future will thank you.
for sure. I think even the grilled chicken, I did, this was a long time ago, but I did post about the Chick-fil-A grilled chicken. And, think everyone thinks the grilled chicken is healthier because it's not deep fried and breaded. And it had some like 50 ingredients just in the chicken alone. And I was like, it's just full of like all of these different things, when in reality, I mean, not to go like down a rabbit hole, or, I'll get off my little soapbox here, but it was insane. of the amount of ingredients just in a chicken, quote, chicken breast. I don't know if you want to call that, but to your point, you're right. Like you can save so much money. You may think, oh gosh, this is like so expensive to buy this pound of ground meat. But when you divide it up, it really is so much cheaper.
Yeah, well, next time you go to the grocery store and you're in the checkout aisle, that's where they put all the quote unquote cheap stuff, the stuff that is inexpensive enough that it can qualify as an impulse purchase. And just look around there and all of those things, recognize all of those things are perceived as cheap. But it tends to be the most unhealthy stuff. It's the Snickers bars and the Hershey's bars and the and the candy and the things of that nature, or maybe a bag of chips. But on a price per ounce basis, that stuff's like 30 to 50% more expensive than Force of Nature, which is one of the most expensive ground meats.
Yeah.
So it's way more I checked it out the other day, and it was like I think Ruffles potato chips were like $1.20 an ounce, and our ground beef was like 70 cents an ounce. And a Hershey's bar is like $1.10, and or you know what I mean, an ounce, and we're 70 cents. So it's just like we've been conditioned to think that meat's unhealthy. It's not. It's super healthy. We've been conditioned to think that it needs to be cheap, and yet we pay more for candy, chips, coffee, bottled water.
Not to mention we pay for it with our health too.
Yeah, so. yeah. The like $4 trillion a year in preventable diseases of Western, civilization and metabolic dysfunction, taxes, the land. What's the cost of losing 1% of insect species every year because of the way we mistreat our agriculture lands?
Yeah.
Or having glyphosate show up in breast milk and urine.
It's really a sad way that we are living right now, and I'm really hopeful that a lot of people can be more aware of what's happening and be more decisive. Is that even a word? More and really look at the future, not just like today, regarding their health. But I know that you have given my listeners a special discount code, which is Digest This 15. And that'll get 15% off any of your products on your website from what I'm told. So if you do want to save some money and try Force of Nature, you can go to Force of Nature and use code DigestThis15, and that will save you some moolah.
Yeah, I'd love if you go to our website and you order products, that's a way to save for sure. We have our widest selection of stuff typically available on our website, and we'll ship it to your door. I mean, it's hard to get more convenient than that. We also, if you prefer to go to the grocery store, we're in, over 4,000 grocery stores around the country. And so, chances are we're available near you, and we'd love for you to support us and try us. And honestly, if not, that's okay too. If you have a local farmer or rancher who is practicing agriculture in a way that inspires you and aligns with your values, then they deserve your support first and foremost. But if you don't, or you can't find somebody, or you got a gap in what you can get nearby, like we'd like to be there for you. And even if you don't buy from us, we'd love for you to follow us on Instagram. And I think we want to do as much educating as we do selling. We want to expose some of these deceptions and some of these some of the myths, and empower consumers to help them understand the food system, understand what they're getting, and help them make better choices. Not tell them what to think, but give them transparency so that they can support a system that aligns with their values and gives them what they're looking for. And I can tell you with confidence that more often than not, when you're paying for something, you're probably getting less than you expect, and I don't want that for anybody. And so I hope I can help you get exactly what you expect if you you follow along and let us help connect some dots for you.
Thank you so much, Robby. I love what you guys are doing. I love your mission, and I love that you just want everyone to be healthier. And so thanks for that. And I'll be looking out for those chickens coming from Force of Nature sometime.
We're working on it.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to this episode of Digest This. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review in your podcast app to let us know. If you're ever wondering how you can support me and this podcast, sharing it with your friends and family is the best way. This is a Resonant Media production produced by Drake Peterson and edited by Mike Fry. To email the show, message us at digestthispod@gmail.com. See you next time. The content of this show is for educational and informational purposes only. It is not a substitute for individual medical and mental health advice and does not constitute a provider-patient relationship. As always, talk to your doctor or health team first.